Welcome everybody to the EisnerAmper Healthcare Podcast. I'm your host, Tony Davis. I'm excited today to bring two of my great colleagues to today's podcast. We have a great conversation around technology and particularly in physician practices, and also outsourced accounting, one of my favorite subjects as well. So I'd like to welcome, before I do that, I want to mention to everybody, make sure you follow us on the all your favorite podcast platforms. But also particularly on the EisnerAmper YouTube page, which you can find all our previous healthcare related material as well. So please go there and check it out. But Amy Jongerius and Becky Munson, welcome to today's discussion.
Thanks, Tony. Great to be here.
Thanks, Tony.
Before we get into it, maybe give you guys a chance to quick introduce yourselves to the audience and give you a little bit of background, especially in the healthcare space. I think the audience would be interested to hear. Starting with you, Becky.
Awesome. Well, I'm Becky Munson. I am the practice leader for outsourced accounting and CFO mid-market practice here at EisnerAmper. That's a mouthful, but really what we do is bring fractional accounting departments to businesses in the mid-market, and that includes healthcare practices. So I actually started my career on the edges of healthcare. I was a controller for a health and welfare fund for a union. And so we were a self-insured fund. So I spent a lot of that time way back when implementing ACA. So
very good.
Back to the good old days.
Yes. Yeah. Excellent. Thank you. Amy?
Hello, I'm Amy Jongerius. I'm a partner who works alongside Becky Munson as I lead the healthcare outsourced accounting team alongside of Becky. Really excited to be here today, as our passion is really to help serve those privately owned practices from, those physician groups, medical practice, privately owned clinics, you name it, when it comes to helping serve them and provide them with that outsourced accounting functionality. So really excited to be here today. Healthcare has been a passion of mine for a number of years, and I'm so glad to be serving them from the accounting side and financial accounting perspective.
Yeah. Well, I think as you listen today, you'll get a great deal of understanding of the depth these two fine colleagues have in this space, and where we think the Eisner team can be a great resource, but also how the firm is actually leading in this space as it's really relevant, I think, particularly to the C-suite and the finance folks, particularly that are listening in here. And I think maybe that's a good place to start for me. As those that have listened before know that my role has been in that finance space for private practices for many a decade now, and it's one of the areas that we, when you're sitting in the finance director level, CFO, controller space, you are often challenged with, which is how to deal with the technology investment in the finance department. Which broadly expands across the entire practice, of course, but also people resources come into play, and dealing with the potential constant turnover that occurs within the actual facility itself, and so that's a constant challenge, is to kind of debate in your mind, but also maybe put it on a piece of paper and sort of think through what's best suited for the organization. And we've come to know over the last 3 decades where technology advancements have really become such an important part of how we go about every single day of recording transactions, tracking revenue, tracking expenses, pulling together benchmarks and productivity reports and KPI dashboards and all that sort of fun stuff. So I think one of the things that one of the things I've always felt sitting in that seat was, is this a question I need to think about right away? Is it something I should worry about later? I think our guests have a couple of thoughts on that front. Maybe Becky, I'll start with you. When you think about investing in the technology space, particularly in the finance area, what are some things that come to mind, and in your experience, maybe some obstacles that practices might run into immediately, once they get thinking about it?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about physicians' practices, especially, or smaller clinics, is in any other business, when someone starts a business, they're the expert. And then over time, they sort of leverage down and they no longer become the delivery expert. They hire additional people and they do more management than they do actual practicing of whatever the business is. And in a physician's practice, that's not possible. They're always the expert. And so they need so much more to support them so that they can focus on patient care and increasingly now, peer-to-peers and things in insurance that are a lot harder. And so when we think about how quickly that changes in a practice, it's so early. And yet what we see consistently in these types of businesses is they wait a really long time to lean into technology because it's expensive or it takes a lift that they don't have the brain space for because they're too busy trying to support patients, which is what they
Yep.
should be doing.
Yep.
And so more than anything, I think the message today is really how can we help these organizations do this faster so that they can focus and have better outcomes later and they're not making up ground when it finally becomes untenable.
Yeah. Amy, picking up on that point a little bit, if I was to come to you and say, "Hey, I'm starting a brand new practice," or we've got a department that we need a bit more, leverage or control in. We've got something that a new ancillary stream of revenue that might pop up occasionally within a practice. What are some things that initially you get brought in to sort of look at and sort of help in that discussion or that debate or that proposal process? What things do you usually do right off the bat when you come into an engagement or a practice that's looking for assistance?
Yeah, great question. I think it's really about listening to where the practice is at and understanding what are some pain points they're experiencing. Who's doing what when it comes to that accounting or that revenue stream, and is it the right person to be helping them? Again, really understand the process and where it needs to be at the end of the day. And so I think hearing those pain points and then us coming back and saying, we have some solutions for you. Here's an option, here's some technology, or let's take this manual process we've been doing and really turn it into something that can be automated. Because again, our physicians are so busy and they have probably been continuing to do it's just how we've always done it, right? We'll just keep doing it because at some point we'll fix it. And I think it's just coming back to the point of, like Becky mentioned, change is hard and we understand that, but also we want to walk alongside you with that change and provide you those options and solutions that can say we can bring in some automation to help solve this point. So it's really coming to understand what their pain points are, coming back and saying, we listened to you, we heard you, and here are the solutions that we think that, can help minimize these pain points for you going forward.
Yeah, I think you touched on something really key there. And as again, when I think about how I would perceive it sitting in the C-suite a little bit is, I've got a problem and I think I can solve it myself, right? That's the first thing people do. But oftentimes what I've seen work well and working with you both on this as well is you are not bringing a canned one stop fix all sort of thing. It's basically there's an approach to things. It's not just we're going to shove this in. And I think that's a bit of a misconception in this space is that, when you talk about the technology that's out there, whether it be the Bill.com pieces or the Sage Intacct, QuickBooks Online, those sorts of software, which is typically what we see in this size space. I think there's this a thought that it's just, okay, I got to buy software and we'll figure it out. So Becky, how would you kind of approach that misconception that and that, we've got everything's just sort of a canned approach, and it may not solve my problem. And then also touch on the cost part of it, because I think that's a bit of a misconception as well.
What we often see with especially new practices is the back office function in general is kind of this thing that somebody just has to get done in order to move forward. And so that practitioner, whatever they're doing, it's like, what's the easiest way to set up the basic thing so that I can move on? And often that's going to be something like a QuickBooks, which is very easy out of the box software that they can just set up. And there's not a process evaluation and what should it be, or what do I need to think about? Is the software I'm looking at HIPAA compliant? Because I need to be HIPAA compliant. How do I vet that? How do I verify? And so I think for a lot of practitioners, it gets really overwhelming very quickly. And all of a sudden it's like, well, then I'll do the easiest thing, right? I'll get the QuickBooks software and then I'll print paper checks and I'll just kind of do things manually. And that's the end of it. Rather than looking at it saying, what's best practice? Where can I find information on who's doing this well? And that's really where outsourcing and outsourced teams can come in and provide you with an entire structure immediately.
Yeah.
So, a team like ours comes in and says, here's what you should be using. We're going to put you on Intact. We're going to give you bill.com. We're going to put a process in place so you know that you don't have any risks for fraud. We're going to make sure that everything you're using is HIPAA compliant, and we're going to train and maintain the staff for you so you don't have to worry about that. And often, because of the scale at which we do it and the efficiencies our team has, it's cheaper than hiring any one or two people in your office that are administrative, right? We're never going to replace your medical staff. We're never going to come in and help you, do what a nurse manager does or something like that. But we are going to come in and take all the administrative burden off of those folks so they can focus on patient care. And I think that's really important. And the cost usually is less than an FTE or the same cost as an FTE, but instead of only getting one person and one limited set of skills, you get a team of people with multi sets of skills. And so that's really the difference, and allows you as a practitioner to stop worrying about technology, stop worrying about process. You don't have to reinvent a wheel. And if you do it early, often our teams like ours can come in at a price point that's less than an FTE, still valuable to you, and grow with you and change with you. And often practices get very large before outsourcing doesn't make sense anymore, and it makes sense to bring in-house. So you've got that consistency of process and team over a long period of time.
Yeah, that's an excellent summation, I think, of the scenarios that people are thinking about when they're again either starting a practice or even if you're down the road a little bit. And Amy, I'm going to have you talk a little bit about some, I wouldn't say horror shows, but we can talk down that road. The stuff that you're seeing when it's not done well initially, and let's talk about that in a second. But I think Becky, you talked a bit about the efficiencies that can be created right off the bat to grant you peace of mind around controls, internal controls particularly, and then just the ability to be able to focus on things that you're really educated to do. So if you're a physician listening to this, you've been trained to provide care to that patient the best way you can, and that's the paramount reason why patients come and see you is quality of care that you're providing. You don't want it to be distracted by the fact that you've got to balance the checkbook, to use an old school term, but that's still a thing today. So I think that's a wonderful point and something that I think those listening might want to start thinking about. Okay, I need to really consider what I'm doing to help me run my practice the best way I can. Amy, just talk a little bit about scenarios that you see occasionally from potential clients that come calling, and some of the things that they're running into when they've tried to sort of do it on their own. Maybe give us a couple of quick examples of things you've seen that I'm sure listeners are probably dealing with today.
Sure. Love to give some great examples. And again, outsourcing can come in at any time. And so a number of situations we see is they've had their practice administrator who's, not an accountant by trade or education, right? They just kind of learned it or picked up along the way, or were assigned to it because that was part of their role, as they joined the practice. And so, seeing a lot of practice administrators trying to do their best and producing financial statements to the owners that really aren't accurate of where they are from a financial or a practice perspective. And so allowing us to come in, review your chart of accounts, make sure they really healthcare specific, making sure that we're coding things specifically or allocating specifically to, what your practice needs are, and really just relieving that practice administrator's stress on trying to find who to do the books. Because a lot of times we see practice admin or even the physician, somebody's in there that really, again, bless their hearts, trying to do their best, is not an accountant. And so we're coming in and doing a great job trying to clean up those books historically, but also provide a precedence and consistency for a strategy going forward. Again, giving them financial statements that they can review on a monthly basis and provide them with an observations of what we're seeing in their practice so they can actually rely upon them and make business decisions from those financial statements. And so those are times where we come in and clean up. There's times where we've seen that, after we brought in a client, there's other processes to change. Again, Becky mentioned, like the bill.com or, Tony, you mentioned as well, like bringing in some automated component instead of cutting manual checks and chasing a physician around to sign a manual check. Like nobody has time for that. That's not best use of your skill set. So let us bring in some automated technology that relieves everyone of processing manual checks, leverage technology, an app, right? Again, do it for yourself, manage cash flow better, and just make that process more seamless so that we can get checks out the door to vendors and you get your bills paid timely. We've seen other groups come in too where, they have something established, but wanted more, wanted us to give them some dashboards and KPIs, like how is their practice doing from a clinic perspective, but also how does that relate into their financial statements and their goals? And, what is their payer mix? Again, really working with the owners to figure out what kind of management tools we can give them so that they can take it to their board or advisors and say, here's what's going on in the practice and here's what our accountants can do. And again, and have those really great dialogues about strategy and where they want to go. Because again, we're here for the journey. It's not just a moment in time. It's really about where are you going with your practice and how can we walk alongside of you to bring you those levels of expertise that you may need to make those best decisions for your practice going forward.
Yeah, wonderful points. And I think, when I think about it from the executive position, I think, nothing drives me more crazy, and I think you both know this, is when I get a financial statement and it starts with revenue and then it's got expenses and we go down the alphabet of accounting, advertising. I think I can almost recite it from A to Z there. It's just not a very helpful tool if I'm a manager or I'm a physician owner when I'm trying to figure out how my overhead looks and those sorts of things. So I think, from a management, from a reporting perspective, I think that's another piece of this. This is not just the debits and credits. Extremely important. Internal controls, very important. But I think also the ability for your software and your technology to tell a story and put it in a format that makes sense. I think that is something that is very underplayed or undervalued. And I think that's where it gets sort of pushed aside as sort of being, secondary or tertiary to everything else. And I just think you can't think that way because at any point in time, you need to know how you're doing from a financial perspective. So Becky, maybe talk a little bit about analytics and some of the things you're seeing that the technology investment can also develop or work coincides with other pieces of software. Do you see examples where I know some of the software we talked about it on one of the previous episodes with Karen and Emily on Sage Intacct specifically, and the ability to link to EMR software, and practice management software, so you can pull information into your accounting. Maybe touch on that a little bit. And you mentioned HIPAA. I know you're very versed in this, so maybe give the audience a little bit of a kind of a commentary around on the data analytics and also on the HIPAA side.
Yeah, I think we live in a world today where it used to be you had all this different software, nothing talked to each other. The environment that you worked in was sort of siloed, especially in healthcare because of HIPAA, because of the compliance rules. And now we don't live in that world. Companies like Epic have changed the game in terms of sharing information across practitioners and across health systems and managing centralized patient data so that they can give better standards of care. All of those things have changed dramatically. And because of that, now organizations like ours and teams like ours can use integrative technology to help you see your practice differently, look at information, make sure that it's compliant and that you're seeing the things you need to see. And Intacct is a great example of that. It can plug into a lot of different technology, also the practice systems like you mentioned, but we can plug into best-in-class other systems that are out there to help someone run or manage a business. And just because it's a practice with patients and insurance billing and all of those things, it's still a business. And we want you to be profitable, want to help you see what that business side looks like. And those patient practice systems aren't great for that. They're great for telling you if something happened, what happened, who did it, and did we bill it? And did we get the right code, or did somebody send it back because it's got a wrong code? Those things are easy to see in there. But the net result of that's what the financial systems and softwares can tell us. And so we want to automate as much as possible. We want to get all that data flowing back and forth as much as we can so that we can look at that and tell you, hey, your AR has grown every month for 6 months, which means patient payments are not coming in at a volume we would expect. We need to go to the billing team and we need to talk to them and we need to figure out why we're not seeing that influx. You're going to have a cash flow problem in 2 months or 3 months or whatever that looks like. And we can't analyze the data like that and give you real-time ideas unless we can see it all in real time. And that's really the world that we live in now that's so different from the past because
Yeah.
they aren't living in silos and we can pull stuff together. And that gives you real-time insights. So you can make changes before it's been 2 years since you've been paid on something and now you're fighting with an insurance company. And those things gum up the process because it's still so much on the doctor or the practitioner to handle that or have those conversations. And so if we can catch it earlier, then you have to spend less time doing it. And I think that the HIPAA component is so important because often what we saw earlier in the technology journey that we've all been on, most people didn't use tech because it wasn't HIPAA compliant or you couldn't guarantee it was going to be compliant. And those protecting that PII and making sure that patient information is safe is such a forefront now. And what really changed for that is just overall cybersecurity awareness. Because the same things that you need to do to keep patient data safe, we all need to do to keep everybody's data safe, and we need to do it in mass. And so the standards have changed in so many ways on how technology handles that. Most folks who are dealing in this space have gone through the compliance procedures for HIPAA and for SOC and other cybersecurity investments. And so you can lean into those standards and that data security so much more than you used to be able to as a practitioner.
And I think that's a point most of us wouldn't, in the finance space, wouldn't think about asking about historically with respect to accounting software. We'd be like, can I balance a checkbook? Can I, run a financial statement, balance sheet? Does it tie out? Little
Right.
things like that, not considering the HIPAA implications potentially. And obviously with, security and breaches of data and stuff, you got to be very careful. And so Becky sits on some pretty high-powered committees at the highest levels in the U.S. here. So she's if you have any questions on that front, she's usually the right person to contact. Something that you oftentimes don't think about. Becky touched on something, Amy, I wanted you just to quickly comment on as well, is timeliness of reporting, the ability to work remotely. And I think some people get kind of shivers when they think about that a little bit. They want their finance team to be right there, next door down. Just talk a little bit about in a few minutes here, some things you're seeing in that remote workspace as it pertains to accounting specifically, being able to use the software but also use the personnel. What are some thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, this remote world isn't going away, right? It's going to be becoming even more. And the nice part is that technology is all speaking to itself, right? It's in the cloud, it's user friendly, it's an app on your phone, right? So again, getting out of somebody being in the office, having to do the work doesn't necessarily need to happen anymore. Again, because the technology is at your fingertips. And so we're seeing it where, again, we're utilizing those individuals within the practice much more at a higher level, right? Like, again, we're getting the transaction level. We're seeing it as we're processing that information for the practice. And instead, we're asking great fault questions of like, did you see that these patient refunds haven't been cashed yet? What's the process around them? Or, hey, these vendors are out there and, do we need to talk about, can we pay them, not pay them, right? What is your cash flow situation? Again, really getting the meat of the practice and leveraging the physician and the practice admin or whoever's there internally to really get them for the value which they should be providing, right? Really being specific to the practice and letting us handle kind of the minutiae of the day-to-day activities around their banking transactions and, again, producing those financial statements. So, I look at it as like, again, every client we work with, there's a holistic team behind us that's working on their financials on a regular cadence, right? Again, there's a team effort for a reason. And I think, again, it's okay that we're not there, within the practice. But again, we just schedule time with them, or be mindful about the time we spend with them and really being there to walk them through their financials and hearing their pain points and then coming together and figuring out, is there something more this practice needs? Is it, are they needing some additional consulting, or is there another area of pain point that's outside of the accounting realm? And how do we bring, our network to them and help them solve that problem?
Yeah.
And so really, again, I think it's just the thought of being okay that we're not, that again, your finance person, your accounting person isn't there, but there's a team, there is somebody to reach out to, there's a phone number to call, right? Like, we're here to support you. And again, I think it's just knowing that we're here and that we, again, want the best for your practice. And if we were there in person or if we're here remotely.
Yeah, and I think just allay any fears for anyone listening on why you wouldn't pick up the phone to call us or call Amy or Becky if you've got something you want to talk through, or you think this might be something that you're looking for. having sat through some of these engagements, I think, there's Amy mentioned earlier, the listing aspect of this. I don't think there's a situation that we don't think about, is there a local component to this that does have a touch point to it, a physical touch point to it, and incorporating that into the engagement itself on a periodic basis where it makes sense, versus it being completely remote, and knowing that there's a hybrid option there available to folks as well. I think both of you would acknowledge, I think that's certainly a key component of putting a engagement or a relationship together that makes sense for the practice and for the outsourced accounting team.
I would echo that. I think if there's a practice here in Minnesota that wants me to come by or visit them, would love to. And same thing for anywhere across the country. I mean, our firm has resources everywhere. And again, if we can have a face-to-face interaction, we are more than happy to do that as well.
Thanks. Becky, I'll just maybe, as we wrap up here, is there anything we haven't touched on, or a piece of advice you would throw out to the audience, as far as if you're trying to balance that struggle between the spend involved? I like to think of it as an investment, not so much as a cost. This is an extension of your organization. I think most of us in the outsourced world think of it that way. But what would it be if there's a sort of just a question in the mind, or something that's hindering? What would the piece of advice be that you would recommend to someone listening?
I think the biggest thing is, let's have a conversation, and give us a call. We're happy to talk you through it. Maybe it doesn't make sense. And our role here is to make sure that we help you run your practice the best that you can. And if that's us, great. But if it's not us, we're going to tell you what we think those right answers are, what your best options should be. And any practitioner doing any kind of outsourcing and consulting should also have that attitude. And so I think if you're not sure if outsourcing is a good idea, or if a technology investment is something you need, let us help you. We can come in, we can do an assessment. There are so many tools that we have to help give you more information that also don't increase your lift. We can work with your teams, we can work with your systems, and we can come in and give you some idea of what's going on and what might be better, or what a next level might look like for you, and put proposals together and different things. And all of that predominantly is at no obligation to you. And we'd be more than happy to have a conversation. So, information is the best thing, whether that's, your day-to-day practice stuff or your financial stuff. And so if we could come in and give you more information and a little bit of a push to some support, or a different workable model for your practice, then you're going to know more than you did, and you're going to be able to make an educated decision. So just don't be shy. We've seen everything. We've solved for almost everything. We have resources in every area, from tech compliance to implementations to automation to, we have a team that does AI. If you want some real resources and real support, calling us and just having a conversation is a good place to start.
Yes, wonderful advice. Amy, last word, anything from your end? Do we miss anything?
No, I agree with Becky. I think don't be scared, right? I know it's like picking out another technology platform that you've probably gone through recently within your practice. But again, I echo Becky, like reach out. Like this is supposed to be tools to benefit your practice and you, and an investment for your future. So again, we just want what's best for you at the end of the day. And if it's either, again, going through the exercise of figuring out what technologies work best for your practice, and EisnerAmper implementing it with you, or if not, if it's going elsewhere, we just really want what's best for your practice, and being able to be part of that journey if we can be.
Yeah, well said. And last word for me would be that, both Amy and Becky, and the entire outsourced accounting team really stay on top of the technology of the day. There aren't more better versed people out there, if that sentence makes any sense. And I think there's also the other thing that Becky just touched on, which is the AI component to this. I think there's a story in that is continuing to evolve daily, it feels like. And I think it'll be a good subject for a future topic, is to talk through how the AI evolution is impacting financial reporting and financial management and the systems that touch that as well. So more to come on that. But we are I think the EisnerAmper dedication is to stay on top of that. So I think a phone call to either of these two would be a wise use of time. So I just want to say again, Amy and Becky, thank you very much for your time today. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
And thanks to everyone for listening to the EisnerAmper Healthcare Podcast. Again, please follow us and check us out on all the podcast platforms and our YouTube page. And stay tuned for future episodes and look forward to it. Thanks again, and everyone be well.